There we go. Welcome back, Visions fans. Ready Player Will here, alongside very special guest Reindell tonight, and with JB79 per usual, episode 16 of the Leonis report. Good evening, guys. Reindell, how's it going, man?
It's going great. Thanks for having me on. It's really an honor to have been invited here alongside two pros for the Visions.
You're amongst equal company, JB. I know you probably feel the same, if
Oh
not
yeah.
lesser. Yeah.
I mean, I've known Reindell for a little while. We've gone back and had some manual PvP matches once upon a time on live stream. I don't know if you remember the old long time tournament that we were in.
Yeah, yeah. I
Some
remember we
good
played
times.
against a couple times in
Yeah.
some long times tournaments, probably.
The throwback
So
days.
yeah, it's definitely good to have you here. I think that I think folks out there are going to be excited to that you're here with us today.
Most definitely. Most definitely. So, getting to know you a little bit better. These are things that I don't know. Curious, what's your history with War of the Visions? Like, what got you into the game initially, even?
So I joined the game on week 2 of launch when I believe it was Facebook ads about it, right? That's actually quite typical way of getting into a gacha game. But in the past, one of my first games that I really got into, and it was instrumental in me learning English, actually, because my first primary language is French, was Final Fantasy Tactics Advance. So the Game Boy Advance version, because that was the console I had, and I never had a PlayStation to play the original Tactics. But that's one game that I played the hell out of, and then eventually on the DS I played the Tactics Advance 2 as well. So when I saw a game that had that kind of grid movement alongside ability usage, it really was a game I had to play. And then I had also played FFBE, the regular, I guess, Final Fantasy feel of just picking abilities.
Yep.
And so I wanted to get into something among these lines as well.
Funny enough, FFPE that you mentioned that they literally, I think, just recently announced they're finally bringing back Final Fantasy Tactics to FFPE over in JP side. I saw some of the promotional materials. The sprites look really cool, but it's been years and years since they were in the game. So hopefully there'll be some good news for us here in War of the Visions for that as well.
Yeah. It's true. They do
Mm-hmm.
typically bleed over. What one game does, they'll often highlight in the other. Yeah, that's interesting. So, Randall, you might be the first person I've ever met that whose introduction was Final Fantasy Tactics Advance. That is a special pedestal that I don't think many people have even played nowadays because of how not inaccessible it is, but it just doesn't get the same hype as others. And maybe
Yeah, yeah.
sadly
I
so, it's quality.
now that I know a lot of other games, I probably would not enjoy it as much. Like I think today I would play the original Tactics and I would enjoy it more. But at the time, it was like my discovery of grid-based counting and then measuring the ranges and making sure you're safe. So it's something that I definitely enjoy about or the Visions, partly why I enjoyed the manual scene so much.
There's definitely something to be said for like the nostalgia factor. Like generally, I think most people you ask their favorite Final Fantasy or like among their favorite is always going to be probably one of the first ones that they played or picked up.
Yep.
So it's kind of like you have those initial experiences and they just tend to stick with you and resonate with you more than when you see things later on. So
Totally.
yeah, and so kind of another interesting thing. You were actually a content creator yourself. You had a long running YouTube channel that I always watched all your videos. I was a big fan of that. But I think it was maybe a year ago or so, maybe a little bit more than a year ago, you kind of stepped down and took a step back.
Yeah.
So do you actually miss that side of kind of creating that stuff, or you kind of you kind of did your thing and you're fine with leaving it where it is, or how is that kind of these days?
That's actually a really tough question to answer because what I miss most, I would say, is the discussion generated by the videos, is the community that I would have people from multiple different countries talking, asking questions in the Discord server, reaching out to me, and then it would lead to a lot of thought leadership essentially about the game, about what was going on. And that aspect of it, I miss a lot. And I know it's something I always enjoy when I look at your videos is you don't just let the comments flow, you answer them back. And then sometimes there's like 3, 4 times of back and forth between you and a viewer because they had an opinion that differs or asks for something a little bit more in depth. And so that would be the aspect that I miss most about the game. Even in videos where I would say something like I took some hot take about Elena back in the days that I was completely trashed by the community because I said she would not be good. And I mean,
famous
I was
last
proven
words.
to be completely wrong in the subsequent months,
Awesome.
right? But the discussion itself was super interesting. So that part I definitely miss. But also having, an hour and a half to 2 more hours every evening to go do sports or do other stuff is something that's invaluable currently. So as much as I miss it, I can't say I would intend on going back to that amount of investment in time.
No doubt.
Absolutely. I know we're likely in the same boat. This is, dare I say, like life consuming to a degree. Where not only are we spending our time during the day, but the amount of hours that we spend doing content, and it really is like a lifestyle almost. It's much of my social circle, if you will, where a lot of the people I
Yeah,
interact with on a day to day basis are like my old guildmates or people in the game, and obviously those are like habits formed from COVID, where we were all kind of just sitting inside and gaming
yeah.
together. So it's continued. I'm sure there's a day it's gonna be bittersweet. We got to move on, but at the same time, I know that once I, get out of it, it's going to be a breath of fresh air at the same time for various reasons, many that you just stated. So yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm definitely glad you two you two keep going because I think in terms of in-depth content, there's nowhere else to go that has that kind of quality. So you're definitely useful for the players, but then yeah, there is the maintaining a personal health. That
Facts. So I'll bring this up. So prior to, I know you'd kind of shifted gears with your guild recently. You were part of Runic Blades, and speaking as the former number one that got dethroned by you guys at the very end there, Runic Blades had a furiously great run through the like fire and wind meta. You guys were notorious for wind strength. You had some really bright leadership there, and we were fortunate enough at VIP right now to have many of the people that came from being disbanded coming into us, and you've had a great, great group of guys there. Do you have any thoughts about top three Guild War and what that took and that period of time and just what it takes for burnout
yeah.
and meta and practice? Yeah.
So I had before coming into Runic Blades, I was not so much in the competitive scene. Like I didn't jump from a top 10 guild to top 5, let's say. I was like from top 300 guild into top 10, let's say. So it was a huge shift. And my initial thought before joining was that the top guild battle was filled with players that had full rosters. They needed to have everything to be able to adapt on a daily basis. And when I joined Runic, I was surprised to know that that was not the case at all. So that really broke a perception that I had that you needed everything.
Right.
And the reality is, at least what we did at Runic, was that there was a roadmap of which units every member of the guild was expected to pull. And the roadmap was, I'll call it free-to-play friendly, in that if you pulled only what was on the roadmap as a free-to-play, you would be able to scrape by. But if you wanted anything outside of that for your own account or your own fun, then you would have to spend some money, because it is a pretty expensive game to keep everything on. But that was something that I found very interesting. And then joining in, having a spreadsheet of all the units and all the VCs that every different player has, so that somebody is able at a glance to know, okay, do we have 30 copies of, let's say, a Dialdo that's coming up, so we can use them in an offensive or a defensive strategy. These aspects of the top Guild War, I would say, were very, very interesting, because it was all about the teamwork, essentially.
No, totally. I know that's one of the biggest misconceptions too. And for those that were monitoring the Guild War names, VIP had renamed itself to I thought this was Whale Guild for a while, and the joke behind that was that we had someone join, and immediately seeing the amount of like
And everybody would say that, right?
like work and coordination. It's literally like dozens of hours of daily testing. It's a ton of absolute research of screenshots of prior guild people looking at their TP values, trying to guess their AI, setting up mock defenses, and then you have 30 people coordinating. Like, it's so much work. It's not the actual spend. And even you're talking about like your Guild War shot callers, where everyone has to stand by, get ready for it's like pre-selected targets, and it's a very rigorous, coordinated thing to get there. And
there you go.
It's way beyond the individual contributor. It's 30 people, so definitely difficult.
Yeah, so I remember you talking about this, but one of the things that I found very interesting was when people would come in, right? We would have interviews about whether they're a good fit or not. And one of the main questions where a lot of people would fall off is just, when are you ready and available to attack? Because at Runic, we would attack essentially immediately at the guild battle start, and within the first hour or two at the latest, we would be done. And then a lot of our guild members had to go to bed afterwards, so it was really the right fit. And we had players that had a solid account, they had the motivation, interaction. They were really nice people, but they would only be available 4 hours into the guild war, and we would just be, I'm sorry, not a good fit with us.
Right.
Try it out with another guild that might have a schedule that fits more. So it's the kind of thing, you're talking about teamwork, but it's the kind of thing that is very interesting.
But either way, so it sounds like now, I know since Runic had disbanded, you kind of took your foot off the pedal. You enjoying the game still? Are you still active in it and playing, you know?
Yeah, I'm still playing on a daily basis. I did take a couple days off this week because I was I was camping around, so didn't have so much time on my phone. But I do get log in daily. I'm part of a guild called Lucis that's not in the highly competitive scene. I think we're top 200 or 300. The guild that I used to be in before I went into Runic, actually. So I'm still playing there, but I'm definitely not putting as much time as I was with Runic. As you mentioned, it's hours of testing more often than not, and I was not one of the highest testers in the guild. I would often put like 1 hour and a half in a day, and that would be it. And I know people place like 5, 6 hours trying to get the very best strategy. So I mean, kudos to those people. They are dedicated to a level that I could never reach. But I still do play, just much more casually.
Definitely. That's our biggest thing of the burnout. It's not even necessarily the characters. It's the testing to maintain that level. It's like, just instead, that's the burnout more than anything. It's not the logins or the,
That's what it was for Runic, at least. We had 2 or 3 people that were the most actively testing, and it wasn't a day in, day out job, essentially. And at some point, they were like, we can't keep on with our real life and then still be this competitive. And we just determined as a guild, if we had the choice between stopping there or going more casual, we would rather just stop it.
Yeah.
And keep the name clean, I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so kind of another question is that we're thinking of, kind of in terms of the game and kind of future looking, maybe quality of life enhancements, maybe a unit or specific content that you might be interested in seeing, come into the game in the future?
I would say it's, I would like to have alternate objectives to eliminating all the enemies. That's something that I think we've been kind of missing, is just say defend the fort for that many rounds. And I know we've had some guild events that delve into this a little bit, but like, I don't know, you could have a manual event where you capture the fort, or you just have units, the AI move towards this area, and if you're able to hold an area for a long enough time, that would be interesting. We could have 2v2 matches instead of 2 players versus 2 players instead of 1v1s. I feel like there's a lot of potential in the way, like there's so many different abilities, so many different vision cards. The unit customization is incredible. And we have units that would shine if the objective was just not to kill all the enemy team, and we don't get to leverage that. So my wish would be just different types of victory conditions.
Yeah, I think there's like a lot of untapped potential there for sure. Like, you think about even maybe the guild leader or sub leaders, maybe they could have like enhanced statistics or something like that, almost like a boss for the guilds. Like something like that might be kind of cool. There was actually, for the 3rd anniversary, we were supposed to get like a new guild PvE mode that kind of flamed out really quickly over in JP. It wasn't well received, and they just decided not to release it at all for us over here. But I hope that they're kind of retooling that, because I think the base premise is fine, like kind of a cooperative kind of guild thing to do. But yeah, I hope that we kind of see that pop up in the future.
Yeah.
The shakeup would be nice. I'll be honest, I have never heard of an alternative to just killing all enemy units for PvP. That's such a good idea. Gumi could definitely get creative with it. You're right. We'll leave it there because it's going to be a wish list item for certain. Talking about wishful thinking. But cool. All right. Well, we'll get into some actual topics of what's going current in the game. We did get some news today, per usual, Monday morning. The biggest one here is the announcement of Dialdo, who is the newest Earth tank incoming. Really interesting character. JB just released a spectacular video. Dialdo versus Raph, probably one of my favorites you've done in quite some time. Very cool setup, very comprehensive, a lot of things to like. That being said, anybody have any strong feelings about like Earth meta incoming or Dialdo's influence on the game at the moment?
Oh, I'll take this one first. That's kind of fresh in my mind from the video that I did, but I think that, I mean, when you think about like Earth meta, you think about how are they going to perform against the entire cast of elements. That includes winds. And I think that even Wind is going to have a problem dealing with if a properly tuned Dialdo and Bradley, and throw in Queen Marcherie there, or some third that maybe has an Imperil that's kind of can help swing the battle. But assuming that you can kind of set up and get 1v1 for Bradley, like he is a tough unit to deal with for pretty much anyone out there. Just like the constant CT ups and huge damage that he puts out. So I think we're definitely going to see, some kind of semblance of an Earth meta here for a little bit. Dialdo's is incredibly tanky. He's got a lot of impenetrable resistances with area resist, unit resist. He's got various kind of statuses he can throw up in terms of like shell. It's got like some really nice counter techs that he has in terms of counter cure, and then a physical damage cut he can throw up as well. So he's really like a complete tank. I think he's going to be one of the best ones we've seen come into the game.
Yeah.
Overall, my feeling when I was looking at him initially, I was like, he seems very, very tanky. One of the things I noticed was that he doesn't have any accuracy on his moves, and I figured that might be an issue for him. But then again, if you're looking at the Earth teams that he's going to be paired with, there's probably going to be Bradley, right? Because if you want to run a competitive team, he has to be in. And then you have your hyper powerful attacker that is essentially never missing to make up for that. So he's got that edge here. And then you're talking about the ability to potentially fight win teams, because that's the big deal. Especially if we're talking about competitive guild scene, if you're building your offense around Earth, and you end up fighting a guild that's prepared wind, you need to be able to at least win some of your fights, otherwise you're out. And I feel like he does have some tools there to work well. Essentially, the wind teams right now are mostly going to be physical teams. So here, you've got a lot of defense on him. You've got the ability to resist debuffs up to a point, which is really what the wind teams do. They imperil your wind resistance, they imperil your slash resistance, and then they go all in with whichever ability they use. So I feel like he's got some of the tools that are needed to make this work. And then, as I've tested many times, well-tuned Bradley can do enough damage to kill wind units, which was not a thing before. The Earth units prior to Brad's release would really struggle, but now you do have the killing power with one of your Earth attackers to pair with him.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's something that we really hadn't seen in kind of the Earth versus Wind matchup. Like you have to go back to like the HLL 2B Tifa days, like when like Oberon and Noctis kind of came out, and then they could smack down those teams before they get powered up. But yeah, I think that you bring up a good thing about the debuff weakening. You think about attackers like Edward with the 45 defense break, or Glaciella with the wind and peril. Being able to kind of have cut those in half is pretty big.
And just commenting on that, that's a new mechanic that was just kind of released this last week, I think. One of the first characters, Reign's upgrade. The way that debuff effect weakening works, it's slightly different than the debuff resistance that we're used to. The debuff resistance that we see on Trust Stones and whatnot, if it's, say, like defense debuff resistance 25, that's a straight percentage chance of it occurring or not occurring. So if it's normally 100% chance that you'll imperil someone's defense, if you have 25 defense debuff resistance, it'll drop that to a 75% chance to proc, not a 100% chance. That is different than what these characters have. What this new debuff effect weakening mechanic is, it's a percentage reduction of that imperil. So it doesn't affect the odds of whether or not it actually hits. It just reduces the potency of it. So if you add, let's say, 50% debuff weakening like Dialdo does, someone is going to do a 38% imperil on you. It would only be 19% imperil instead. So very strong for reducing how strong those are. I am intrigued, though. I don't know exactly how these are intertwined. He does seem very reliant on some of these buffs to ramp up, that I am curious how much of these can potentially get dispelled, where right now a lot of these newer units that are really, really good don't have easy access to dispel. There's a couple off the beaten path characters that do. I know like Resolve is technically one of them. I think the new Howlett's technically one of them. Characters that aren't top of the meta right now, but when you get a character like him where his chance of being targeted and the chain resistance, that's a buff. That can be dispelled. You lose that. The same thing with the debuff weakening. I don't know if that's under the umbrella of dispellable effects or not. I know some of these new ones get kind of wonky, but that was the first thing that stood out to me, that if this is a unit who can dispel, he only has 5 innate hate that I think I know. So he'll take 3 hits. If If you can dispel the rest of it, at that point, you're really, again, trying to lean into those imperils, because if you lose that debuff weakening, you can still do it. Status effects are on the table. Being a 97 faith unit, he's not impervious to all different kinds of status effects. And he's just very well rounded, but I do have high hopes for him. It's the kind of unit that there's no one way to beat them. You have to take lots of things, and reaction block rate is amongst one of the largest, where he's got a counter ability that'll heal some health back, and another counter ability that will reduce all physical damage by 30%. So you talk about like reaction block rate down, enormous in going against that matchup.
Yeah, you do. You definitely need the reaction block. Like healing down is good too, to kind of, if you don't have the reaction block, but then dispel is probably number one. To he's so tanky that he's going to be able to take a bunch of hits. So I think that's the best way, is dispel him and work around him.
So I'll be curious to hear your thoughts. What team members would you run him with?
Bradley's a must. That's a given. I think the third one, it's map dependent. I do think that he has some self-curative potential, because he's got the red mage sub. I'm sure some people would lean into the Cura and allow him to be that source of curative potential, particularly since he's as inaccurate as you said. A lot of times those very inaccurate characters will opt to do those TP based skills. So yeah, if you're going against evasion and he's just popping Cura left and right, because now his healing power is awful, that's a very low mod, so he's not going to be doing a lot of healing with that. But when you consider a third unit, I still think some of the most popular Earth units to go with would still be Immortal Zazan. I think he's one of the most well-rounded Earth units. Queen Mashri is okay, but she's a little one-trick re-raise dependent for me. A little boomer bust around that one survivability tool, but I do think there's some other viable ones. I know Urel has a really interesting niche. Obviously, those are pulled for Rulgia. I think we'll get some good upside with Rulgia as well. Yeah, but those are kind of my general thoughts just off the bat. What about you guys?
I think the thing about Queen Mashri is the Imperil. She just brings so much value to the team with the Imperil, and that's really about it. You kind of keep her in the back as much as you can to kind of avoid taking hits. But yeah, Rugia, I've just been consistently kind of disappointed with his damage. Like the utility is there for him, the accuracy is there. Like he's got some nice things, but I guess like if you have Bradley doing so much damage, like you can kind of live with maybe less damage from that slot.
That's where I'm going with that thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, Reindell? Any Earth favorites?
I am really torn between many picks, but honestly, I feel like Katone's utility is still very, very high, because of the drain force power, and depending on whether your enemies have any barriers up and whatnot, it ends up being a reliable tool against many teams. Also, I'm just not sure about the VC synergy, whether you would be able to build Katone to be evadey, or if you could build VCs to get a ton of single target and AoE resistance, have her tank the first hit, just because she's got so much mobility. She's going to be hit once before Dialdo comes in, and then she can heal back up. So I guess depending on the map, I would see her just taking that first hit, not dying, potentially with a re-raise hat on, and then switching to aggro, healing back up, and being in the back line.
Great mention.
I like it.
Yep. Well, all right. So we did kind of talk about counter picks and what you would do to potentially beat him. I do think Wind does have a strong case, but I think it's very specific Wind units. I do think Joom is one of them with that new 140 upgrade, where not only is she's got that guaranteed hit, so we're talking about Ketone and Tazana, those characters, but her upgrade there is also that it's AoE reaction block rate down. So you're talking about some easy reaction block rate. That's an immediate source of it. I do still think Flagbearer Glaciella is a good unit. We talk about Dispel. She's got that long range ability that is the Dispel. Pierce is technically his one weakness. It's not very big, but technically it is. So if you are leaning into that Pierce, you can go that way. She's also got the Dispel Courage, which goes great for Bradley, so that doubles up there. Dispel Auto Revive, so it has some upside there. So I do think at least Joom and Flagbearer Glaciella. I think after that it's really a question of whether you go Ayaka to haste healing and just support, or if you go full offensive output and just go like Winter Luartha, go for the double Pierce. I don't know. You have some options.
Yeah,
I think. Go ahead. I was just going to throw Edward back in the ring too. Like he does. Dialdo does have 10% to strike res, but it's not like an enormous strength for him. Edward does bring the dispel innately from his buff as well. he can get rid of, protect and some of these things. So I think that he's a very solid choice too.
In my perspective, the thing Dialdo should be most scared of is Sadly, because you start with wind teams that already have very high earth resistance innately. He increases all element resistance, throwing that even higher. Then he's got Indoctrination that is a line hit, might hit Dialdo's teammates, but also might confuse him, since Dialdo is probably going to be a high faith unit. So that aspect is also a scary one. Same thing with the charm threat that Sadly might bring. So I think versus Dialdo specifically, he really gives win teams the strength they need. And then, Glacial might be able to do most of the damage, but Sadly increases tankiness and has the CC that might mess up with Dialdo.
Yeah, I think one of your best plays is probably to line up Sadly onto King Bradley and get the charm off on him. Have him kill his own team.
You bring up a great point, though, with the Earth Res. That Dark Ramu Vision card, being wind capable, is Earth resistance to the party. So you're talking about that matchup and really trying to hard counter it. Absolutely a great call on that character and that resistance there.
The other thing that we have on Global is More the Merrier's card, which is exclusive to our side, which also gives Earth resistance for wind.
Good point. Double up. I know I have intentions to pull him. I think tanks age very well in this game, and they do a good job bringing them to the limelight every once in a while. It's kind of cyclical, it seems, at this point. But what about you guys? Is he in your arsenal to go after this week?
I'm going for him. I invested into to King Bradley recently. Finally dumped a few scrolls into him, and I'm excited for Dialdo. I'm really excited about the Pierce weapon group. I think I really like enabling that rainbow play with him as kind of the front of that group. You could put him with Glaciella, you could put him with Oberon. We have Ice Jaden coming in the future. So I think, I'm excited more about that necessarily than the Mono Earth, which, it's still cool. I'm excited to see Earth kind of be in the spotlight, but I'm more excited to kind of get beyond a little bit the Mono Element era.
On my end, I'm not going to be pulling him, mostly because I currently don't have enough Viz to pity, and I don't believe chasing one of those without pitying is worth it. My most recent pick was Viga, because his manual potential in my mind is just insane. So that's what I chose to focus on. If there's a rerun in the future, he's definitely in my get list, though, because I would like to have a dedicated tank for every element. Earth currently doesn't have one in my roster, at least. So it's a good reason to pull just because of that.
Sounds like someone's going to do some selection quests here. Get that Muraga tank that JB might be piping up.
I should.
I did get him finished. His HP is off the charts now. Cost me a pretty amount of statues and all Chris and whatnot.
Definitely.
Gumi needs to, I think, raise some of the farming, I think, for those, kind of in this reincarnation era.
Absolutely. The statues, not nearly enough. You can grind an entire day's worth of energy pots and just barely have enough statues to get someone, let's say, 40 reincarnations, and that's on a weekly basis. It's just not enough when you spread them all out. Dialdo does have a weapon coming out unique to him. It is a brand new spear. It's kind of an interesting spear. The spear itself is pierce attack and magic attack. It is a magic scaling weapon. It does also give human killer for both physical and magical attacks, which apply to the other jobs that can equip it with some 8 AoE resistance. And overall, really great weapon for Dialdo in particular. It does have a magic build and an aim build that gives 18 accuracy. I'm kind of on the fence which one to build. I'd probably think accuracy because this is so bad. Innately, you might as well go for the extra free bit while you can. Then again, there's something to be said too about just leaving your tank blind and letting them buff perpetually during a fight. There's nothing wrong with that either. So I do think both builds are viable.
Yeah, I like that that this kind of enhances some value of some of the older original Pierce jobs, where you can get a nice offensive boost with a 20 effective mod between the two passives, and then you get some area resist thrown in there too. So I think it's Trick Lancer and then a couple of the old Lancer jobs and stuff. So
Dragoon and Lancer, which those jobs have not always. Lancer in particular has aged awfully. I don't think this is going to be the game changer for any of them, but it's a nice boost.
Big Eld is going to like that 8 area resist.
Not enough.
Yeah. I was going to say any of those jobs that have accesses to the AoE resistance passive would probably go for that spear, just because what uses your unit once they're dead. So just that little bit of resistance can make a big difference. But I'm very curious in terms of type, whether people are going to go for the aim type or if they're just going to go with the magic. And Well, my take is that if you either want to have 0% hit chance so you're healing, or 100%, and that decision you pick when you pick your sub job. If you want to be able to hit, you pick Korodama, you have Unevitable Pain. If you want to not be able to hit, you pick Red Mage, and you're happy with that. But my take would be just pick Magic. But what do you guys think?
So I usually farm up enough to build a couple of them. I think that I'm going to start off with the Magic version and rely on the 100% hit. I don't know. I think that you could go with Red Mage too, and in that case, I would probably go for Aim. But he does have Sleep there in that job as well. So, I think there is some benefit to kind of leaving him at low accuracy, even with Red Mage, because if he can't hit, he'll use Sleep, or he'll try to cure himself. Depending on range and whatnot. So
absolutely right. And for those that don't remember, that sleep ability makes that unit a guaranteed hit. If you're asleep, you can't evade. So that's a huge thing, whether it's Dialdo or a teammate. Great utility there. Cool. All right. Well, on that note, we do have Dark Golem also announced. We will go into a deeper dive next week, but exceptionally good Esper in particular for Dialdo. That Vision card also really great for those Ice and Earth potential matchups to counter some of those wind threats that we're talking about. That's certainly an angle to take it. We do, in the meantime, at least have a couple other topics here before we get into some of the Q&A and whatnot. There is a surprisingly no Addison Ray glove this week. There has been a data mined picture of a glove. I'll be honest, my personal prediction, someone made a great observation in our guild that they were wondering if they were going to release the raid levels 30 to 60 next week, because right now it's only 1 to 30, right? And when they asked that, my initial thought was, well, shoot, that's a great idea. They gave the cell phone for 1 through 30. They'll probably do 30 through 60 and do the book, and then like 60 to 90 do a vision card or something like they normally do. And that doesn't seem to be the case, or at least not next week. So I am curious if that's something they'll entertain. But either way, no weapon for her yet, but that is coming. We do have a couple unit awakenings, MA2s, both under that umbrella. In particular, Moore and Niv'Lu, 2 units that you probably haven't seen a whole ton of. Recapping quickly, and we'll see if there's any insight per se to either one of these characters. Moore, kicking things off, is getting some HP, 20 spear penetration, and her job 120 ability is getting a Dispel Shell on target and 1 extra use. Seems kind of light in my opinion. You guys have any thoughts?
I like Moore a lot. When she was initially released, she was one of the units I played the most. But I feel like she fell off massively compared to the modern damage dealers in that she doesn't have a way to survive. And so her damage potential is still there. She can improl water. So initially when Moore was released, I used to play a ton of her. She was one of the units that I thought was the most well-rounded because she was beefy and then did great damage. But compared to the units that are released recently, she doesn't have a good means of survival. So initially just having good stats was enough, but now no re-raise, no courage, no good barrier. She's got a barrier against magical attacks, but that's it. So the odds are, even if she has better attacks and a shell removal in one of her abilities, she is going to die too quickly to be of use. I don't think she's worth the investment in today's meta.
I would agree with that. I think that especially when you look at her, how tanky she is against physical damage, it's non-existent. I think in this upgrade, she absolutely needed some area resistance that she could have stacked along with her self buff, which when Kododama got upgraded to that, her barrier got some area resistance added into it. So, maybe she could have gotten up to like maybe a 60% range. As it is now, like even with this added HP, she's just not going to hold up to the new damage dealers that we're seeing here in year 3. So, yeah, I would not. And her damage doesn't hold up as well either. They gave her a little bit of Spirit Pen here, which she absolutely needed. She didn't really have any before. But yeah, it's just not enough to make it worth it.
It's awful. Yeah, it's really bad. You keep bringing up the point she doesn't have enough to compete against the new units. Dude, she didn't have enough to compete against the old units for the past 2 years. Like there was I've seen few and far between Moors. That's a strong magic niche that she has that I had some hope in that Black Rose Elena meta way back in the day. It never came to fruition. It was close, but yeah, Moore unfortunately is been relegated to a plot relevancy only and no PvP application per se.
I tried very hard to get her to work in the Jaelena meta where, she had the high spirit, she had shell, she had the regen where, she could deal with Jaden very, very well because of that with the barrier and all that stuff. Of course, now Jaden has all the barrier breaks in the world, so that's no longer all that relevant. And then back then, she didn't have the accuracy at all to hit Elena, other than unavailable pain. Of course, now she has bursting lights or whatever to kind of help her out there, but that's that ship has already sailed.
Oh yeah, very much so. And on ships that have sailed, I think I'm going to speak for the group here. Maybe, maybe not. You guys are manual geniuses. You're probably some high IQ strat. I don't know. But Niv'Lu also getting the upgrade here. I don't think it's what she needed personally. She had 25 crit hit chance, 30% acquired AP, and her 120 ability adds a 20% agility buff to self. Very odd overall. I don't think it does anything to enhance what she was supposed to do originally, nor do I think it's anything to make her competitive. She's just way too squishy, way better missile damage dealers. There's just so many holes.
Yep.
It's tough.
Yep. I mean, just play Frederica, and you have a much better, well-rounded unit that had a great Transcendence. So
yeah,
that's it.
Yeah, her mastery too, like, it definitely tried to focus her more offensive, and then I feel like they've tried to kind of continue that here with this upgrade. She's still a fine manual unit. Like, she's one of the quickest quickeners in the game. Her agility is insane, and that's kind of her niche. She'll continue to be that, which you don't need to really transcend her to get that, to be honest.
Yeah.
And then honorable mentions, we have some lower rarity units, both Serjes and Mia. Serjes, I think, has some upside. He's gotten some love. I don't think it's enough to make him get the edge in limited Guild War content. When it comes to ice units, there's already a bunch of low-cost ice units that are just far superior. Mia, kind of the same idea. But for those having tough times with the selection quest, these are nice upgrades. I don't know. You guys, have any high hopes for either of them?
I think the interesting thing about these two units is when you think about SR units, their agility is always god awful, but these two units actually, like, they have pretty decent agility for their cost. Mia in particular has a pretty cool skill with her job 25 that can reduce CT. So, like, it's another kind of manual,
Yep.
interesting manual unit. Or PvE unit as well.
Okay, well, as we transition to some of the character talk, we'll get into the war room here where we look a little more at map analyses and PvP things going on. Right now, limited Guild War battle is wrapping up. We're in the final stages of it. We have the new guild battle coming back, which we'll talk about in a second, on this Wednesday. What about this limited Guild War? Kind of the first half of the week, couple elements. Now we got a couple new elements in the back half. How's it been for you guys?
I like when they split up the elements and kind of eliminate the counter play, because I don't know, sometimes it just feels bad that you just have like an automatic lose to a lineup, and some elements it's just really hard to play them or use them because of that. So elements like water and some of these maybe lesser used elements, this is maybe a time to kind of break them out and use them a little bit more.
Yeah, I would say in my current eyesight of being much lower than the top guilds, what I see when I go into battle is 50% Sephiroth face team, and then 40% Brad face teams, and then the rest is a bunch of randomness. So I feel like when they're splitting the elements like this, it's more fun because you don't just play the pick your counter game, but still the fact that Dark is currently so strong makes it so that any elemental, no matter how you mix the elements, if Dark is one of the options, it's what for a lot of players at least, it's what they're going to face against no matter what.
Yeah, I agree. And it's funny, there is a tipping point though that if you know you're going to get Dark, you can start just building for Dark, if that makes sense. And there's enough teams that can beat Dark. They just got to be slightly tuned for it. So yeah, while you run the risk, and this is something more that we consider in top 10 where people are more flexible in switching stuff in and day out. I think as we've observed, JB, like looking at meta snapshots, people are more than happy to just, play Dark and let it ride for 6 months.
Yeah.
If that's the case, throw Demon Wall and Dark Res, and you have units that have Dark Res buffs, and there's vision cards that have it on it. Like, you can just kind of stack against it. Dark does become relatively beatable, but again, you just have to kind of cater to it.
DMR and whatnot.
Yeah, there's ways around it. I'm surprised that more people don't leverage it just to kind of make people more hesitant to bust it out, but I mean, yeah, Dark.
Well, that's exactly what I did with my guild. Is I looked at the top competition, which was Aurora in our bracket. They're like 9 or 10. They're a top 10 guild, and I was like, these guys ride or die with Dark, so we're gonna go Earth and we're gonna shut them out. And we won. So
Yep.
we're gonna take first place in the bracket.
Nice, dude.
Yeah.
Congrats. Good stuff.
It's fun.
Nice. Well, good. Well, we also have a new Guild War map announced. This is the Mines Entrance 3. So yeah, this new Guild War map buff right now looks to be HP and Magic, as I recall. I think it's accurate here. Might be a little hard to read with the topographies, but the big defining trait of this map is this giant, I don't know, structure in the middle of it, where, yeah, you get up to height 6. There is kind of like a ramping path you can take if you're in that slot 1 area, but otherwise it's relatively flat and wide open. A lot of height 1 areas here to lean into. I'm intrigued to see how the movement works out in this map. Is this, you guys take a look at this yet, or any teams you want to dive into?
This is kind of weird. Like it seems like a map that you could really take advantage of that slot 1 and get a one-on-one matchup there and just take that unit out.
It's funny saying, yeah, that's baitable range. 13 squares. I was just doing the math. You can definitely bait a unit at this range in that slot 1.
Yeah, that's where I was going as well, in that it's probably going to be easy to face off one unit after the other, so it will be a map where units that are self-sufficient will probably shine a bit more than the opposite. And then same thought, if you have a unit that you're able to set up so that they move forward quickly on turn 1 instead of grouping and buffing, you will be able to pull the enemy, assuming you're faster than them, pull the enemy into attacking without buffing, because the units do start off very close to each other, so that also allows some flexibility there.
And you just said a huge keyword that I'm thinking of when I build for this team. The fastest character you can possibly put on the field needs to be in this slot 1. Like, that's one of those things we talk about team building 101 and dictating the flow of the battlefield and not, like, controlling what you can control. That's one of those things you literally, if you can control this slot and guarantee that your unit can do whatever they want, whether it is Berserk rush forward and bait the enemy, maybe it is ensuring a buff to that slot 2. Whatever you do, that's the kind of unit you must ensure they do exactly what you want them to. So yeah, high agility units, right there.
Yeah, I'm already seeing what I'm gonna do with my fire team.
Yo, Yuffie right now, right? Yuffie going straight across. Absolutely, I knew it. No doubt. Good stuff. Yeah, so we have that map. We do technically have a new arena map as well. I'm obviously expecting the bonus units to be Howlet still, and maybe drop off Addison. I know they have 3 bonus units in this week's arena, which I was kind of sad about. I was hoping it was just like Howlet, so I could just ride ice to the top and not have to worry about all the light everywhere still. But either way, we wrapped up a 7-time arena medal week. I'm pretty happy about that. JB, do you get any close to your platinum armor yet?
Well, we got the 2000 pre-match medals or what have you in the mail, I think today.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so I'm 1 recipe away now. I need 5,000 medals and that'll be done.
Yeah.
So close.
That's something.
I should be done by now, but for a while I was building up the Hermes sandals, so I got maybe 16 or so recipes into that before I was like, oh, I think it was when they did their first round of upgrades on the PvP equipment, and they gave it like unit resist, way back when, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna grab that.
Absolutely. In hindsight, good decision. I did the same with the Hermes sandals, and yeah, I'm like around 16 recipes or so, and wish I went the other way with it. So
they're both good.
They are. Well, good, but we'll move into the Leonis Spy Report now, where we look at some JP released things. The big name this week, and JB, you predicted this accurately, Melnia being an Earth unit. You had said that for quite some time. To be fair, Miraga's wife-esque lover, so not a reach per se, but good to have those things come true. A very interesting unit from what I can tell so far. Have you guys dove into her kit at all? Look a little closer?
Yeah, I did browse over it. It seems like a very well-rounded attacker. To me, she reminds me of Alaya mostly, which is a compliment if you're thinking in terms of ranged attacker in this game. I like that through your build, you can either be maximize your range and then your accuracy by using the Ranger passive, or you can do the Alaya special, reduce her movement, and then have some depth penetration instead. But speaking about her tools, she can break barriers. She's able to, I believe it was remove either re-raise or courage.
She can remove re-raise on her buff.
There we go. That's it. So she can buff to remove re-raise as well. And typically we see units that deal with 2 of the big 3, like barrier, re-raise, or courage. So in that and that way she does meet up with expectation. And then she has access to the Ranger sub job with the Shadowbind ability that has incredibly long range now and a good immobilize chance. And for me, that is a big pro. It also has counter chance reduction, and we're seeing units now with 2 counter abilities and really good reactions. So having reaction down in a very long range that is likely to be the first move you use before the enemy comes in is a pro in my perspective.
I did not look that far down, but you're right. That is a 6 range ability, up to 8 with her passive. That is an exceptionally long attack. I like it. Good call out on that. And yeah,
that ability is insane. I've used it extensively in manual play on Uni. it's really good with him. I agree. She is has a lot of similarities to Alaya, even down to kind of the buff that she has that kind of has the diamond radius to it. Hers gives protect, which was pretty cool. She's got very high defense penetration potential. She can pretty much ignore it completely. She's got some decent AP management there with the AP restore. I don't know. She can be built very accurate, but I feel like you have to kind of purposely go in that direction within kind of choosing the passives. Her kind of innate luck and is more middle of the pack. Her dexterity is very nice, so she's going to be a pretty decent crit unit.
Yeah, I would say, as you're pointing out, JP, if I had to mention one specific weakness, it would be her accuracy not being the highest. She does have sharpshoot with its 4 casts on the Ranger job, but at this point, when you compare with the insane AoE abilities that units could be using, what you're more likely to see is not her sharpshooting evasion units. It's more her getting the tank in an AoE attack and missing the evasion unit next to her, and in that regards, her accuracy is an issue.
Yep.
Yeah. She has the potential to be very, very accurate, but you do need to consciously kind of take certain passives and build her in that direction to get there.
I agree. And
I love the healing power reduction from the 70 healing power is massive. Go ahead, Will. What were you going to say?
So see, that's one of those things where I do think it's one of those characters, if you need accuracy, you bring Rulgia instead. That's his niche if you're bringing a missile unit for evade. Because I do think her 2 passives are too good to switch off. The first one being that range of 2 and the missile attack res pen of 40. That's an exceptional one for what they need to do. The second one is that decreased move of 1. Hugely important for all ranged missile units, but it's also that defense pen and the AP consumption. I'm so happy, though, that neither of you mentioned my 2 favorite things about this character. Her 120 ability is an AoE dispel, like you see on the sub job at Winter Victoria, whatever sub job is the spell spread.
Sniper.
Right. Exceptionally good for that range. Most modern units, like I said, off the beaten path don't get that, so I love that, number 1. The second one that I love is that her ranged other ability is a select 2. So you have this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up to 7 range ability that you pick 2 and scale off those unit resistances. And she's the first ranged unit to have access to an ability like that. You have a lot of characters that have maybe some similar range, like 4 to 5 squares, but my goodness, I saw that, and that's a exceptionally good ability, I think.
Especially when you look at that targeting radius and just add 3 onto it, or potentially up to 4,
right,
with her self buff.
Yeah.
So she's going to easily be able to kind of pick off backline units with that. She'll be able to hit the tank and somebody else behind them. So that I think is very strong, especially with the sleep chance on there too. If you think about a healer maybe behind the tank.
Yep.
I would see a case for running her with high faith because she's probably going to get hit either way, to die either way when she gets hit. And then I do want to point out that this ability we're talking about is a line shot, though. It's not a lob shot. So you might not be able to hit all the backline units you want because of the walls being a potential issue.
Good point.
But she does have abilities that are lob shot as well, even if you're in her main job. So you don't have you're not completely blocked out of firing through walls like Frederica would be, say, if you don't pick Ranger.
Yep.
That's a good point. It seems like she's 2 and 2, like her low AP ability and that select 2 are both line of sight.
Yep. That's okay, though. And you bring up the good point about the faith. I was going to mention that, too. You have that sleep access, and then her limit break is the poison chance. And then technically, if you wanted to go nuts with that immobilized chance on that you're saying on the Ranger sub, also great status effect. So 97 faith for certain, yeah.
The WOTV calc description of the limit burst is incorrect, where it says increase human killer. It should be decrease human killer by 40.
Oh, so it improves the damage of your enemy. That is better than I thought.
Yeah.
You know,
I know that on the some of the JP streams I was watching, they were testing it against Ketone and kind of looking at the drain force damage reduction that she would have with it, and the drain force was reduced substantially. So
that's a really interesting one. You know why? Because human killer, when you talk about the mods for that, it's typically from your Esper number one, which most popular Espers get up to 25 human killer. But when you talk about 40 human killer total, the only other spots you would get that are on some of these unique weapons that we've seen, where like the Kefka cloth has human killer. But more than anything, it's the new job-based vision cards. One of the things those have done very well is introduce human killer, which obviously is applicable to a wide range of characters. It's not just element attack up. So sure, you might lose 10 element attack up, but you get 10 human killers, so it's not the same. That these new job-based vision cards, this is tuned for that as you might see more parties leveraging that, you'll have some people in that 40 human killer range that you can get that full modifier reduction. That's interesting.
Yeah, and then I guess this can go in the negatives and decrease damage on a human if you didn't have enough human killer, since it's a flat debuff, so it's good either way.
Right. Yep.
Right. Yeah, I don't think you can go negative on the modifiers. I don't think you can. There's never been a mechanic like that, I think.
From what I was seeing on the JP live stream, that it did work that way, because they had essentially a Ketone and they were testing it against Aldoa as well, and they were both naked. They didn't have any equipment or vision cards on, and then they debuffed them with this, and then I think Aldoa's drain force went down to like 0 or like 100 something. Like it was basically nothing at that point.
I gotta test it. That's super interesting.
So obviously, like a fully kitted out unit, it's not going to affect their damage that much, but essentially, minus 40 mod to whatever damage. It's something.
Absolutely. Well, good. And they're giving her a gun, which is kind of interesting. It pairs well with that healing power down to 70 that you mentioned. This one is upon critical hit, 20 healing power down, so up to 90. That'll be the most you can get in game. Obviously, very strong for the amount of tank survivability we're seeing with that heal back mechanic. The initial AP of 20 is also great. Really, really awesome weapon for these missile units overall. It's only a couple gunners. It's not all missile units. I'm sorry, but yeah, great weapon.
Yeah, and then the attack stat is really high at 195 too. Like I would usually enjoy the Razzle Gethy because of its 228 attack, but that is not losing out much for the bonus you get.
Yeah, so this one, the like you said, Will, since this was an effect on crit, it does stack with whatever normal debuff that they're applying. So really cool that you can put this on some older gunners, like dual gunners, or even Alaya, I think, can equip it as well.
Yep.
But especially for Melnia with the 70 healing power reduction, get another 20 on there. Super, super nice.
Most definitely. Well, good. All right. We'll transition now into the Leonis Town Square. We got some Q&A things that we'll go over. So for the Q&A today, the first question we've gotten is, if you designed a character, what cost, element, and jobs would they have? And if you could, would you design a gimmick to add to the game? For instance, this example is if Winged Stern had a gimmick that put a shield on his cross-shaped buff, and that when it's broken, you'd see the spinning swords. Sounds like this person wants some more unique animations, which is slightly different than designing a character. So that's kind of a two-parter. But yeah, we'll start, Reindell, with you. Do you have any ideas if you were to design a character? No cost, element, jobs, just generally speaking?
That's a really tough question, because you're talking to me just as Dialdo got released, and for the longest time I wanted that magic-oriented spear unit that we just got right now. So that idea is out of the table now. But I would love to see a unit that has essentially no offensive move outside of status effects, and that would just be using them a lot, because we see a lot of those units that we have are going to, if you're looking at their AI, they're going to throw out those inefficient attacks more often than not, instead of just going for the super strong Toad or Sleep that they have that has a 50% base chance. And if you turn off the offensive move, you're losing out on some other elements within their AI, so you can't exactly make that work. So I would see that just gimmicky unit that's a status effect master and that just annoys the battlefield. I don't know if that answers the cost element. I don't care. I want to see that kind of unit.
I love that.
Can I piggyback off that, if you don't mind? I had done forever ago a Sadali, before his character came out, a prediction what I want to see Sadali to be, and that was one of the things on his sub job. He had access to all status effects. None of them did damage, And the way I set up his main kit was that no abilities did damage. And in order for him to do any damage, you'd have to equip in a passive. That passive would do like an 86 modifier. But yeah, a character that had no offensive abilities. And I used the Mastermind Zon mechanic that you guys might remember from FFBE. The idea being you select like a giant diamond radius, you copy whatever buffs are applied, and you'd have to limit them, but like attack, defense, spirit, attack, copy those buffs, apply them on your own. And I had similar ideas being like, a buff that was like take all the enemy elements and your team gets 20% element resistance of whatever those are. And going with that angle, I like that idea of a character that it's basically like a 2v3 fight, but they do all these weird things to like influence the battlefield. I love the idea.
Yeah.
I like that too. One thing that I was thinking about was, and actually I thought that this might be the direction they were going when they first kind of unveiled another story and these kind of void characters. But I really want to see an elementalist character that sits outside the elemental wheel, and all of his moves are non-elemental, and maybe he has something interesting like he leans actually into the elemental resistance for no damage resistance or anything like that. He just gets similar to Sephiroth. Maybe he just has the 20% flat against all other elements. I think that would be kind of an interesting take.
I agree.
Yeah, that's a nice one.
It's funny that Sonali character was typeless. I thought that was such a cool mechanic.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, dead serious.
Yeah, I remember watching that video, and it was the first idea that I had of a non-elemental character was watching your Satellite Mastermind idea.
I thought just such a fun thing to play with. I like what this person brought up though with the gimmicks though in terms of animations. I'm actually 100% on board with this. I don't know what it would take to create new, animations for certain characters, but some of these characters like Sephiroth, when he dies, he falls to one knee.
Yeah.
I think he's really one of the only
Doom
ones.
has a wind, green-colored Gluck when her passive procs instead of the usual. Like a few units have those.
I like him. I don't notice them quite often. It could be an animation thing if I have him on or off. It could be a speed thing. Sometimes it's too fast. But I do like that idea of adding in some fun personality to some of these characters.
The other thing that I would like to see, it's not necessarily like designing a character, but like maybe some more shield equipment. That's I mean, we have a couple TMRs, but we've never really had something you can equip in the main slots.
Yes, like Charlotte's TMR is technically a shield.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe Engelbert's as well. I can't remember.
Yes, it is.
I believe these are the two only shields in the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talk about useless fun facts that we know. There we go.
I also believe there's only one class that can equip shields. Two: Charlotte's unique class, and then Paladin. But that's it.
Yeah, so they never like kind of have gone further with that idea. It's another kind of interesting thing.
Such a cool idea. Can you imagine if they made a shield and the ability was non-barrier break? What better purpose of a shield creates a physical barrier that's unbreakable, and that's the shield mechanic, and that would be very unique to that paladin class or that tank class.
That's so true.
Very
that would be
cool.
Nice.
I like it. All right, cool. Gumi, listen, hire us. We're here wasting time on a podcast. I'm kidding. Yeah, so this second question, we have mentioned on some of these podcasts with one of the demerits to the new Miranda is that she's a low cost unit, and there's a lot of low cost light units, and so she just kind of gets edged out there. So this person had a comment last question that they think she would have sold 10 times better had she been anything other than light or dark for that reason. Do you guys agree or disagree with that?
So
I would like to just throw the idea that Dia was going to be released a very short while afterwards with the same main class, and then it's a free to build unit that you can get, and that is, I won't say as good, but it's honestly competitive with Miranda. So I think more so than the element issue, sure, element might play into it, but mostly there's a similar unit you can get for free.
I think because you can freely reincarnate Dia, I would say that she's just as good. I mean, in my opinion, as a non-reincarnated Miranda. But on that same note, 100%, I would have looked at this unit differently if it was in another element that, and we'd actually talked about it that week that she came out. There's a few elements that don't have any 70 costs on their roster. I don't know why they had to kind of shoehorn her into light. That was, I don't know. I didn't really look twice at her. I mean, cool if I get her someday, but there's plenty of other 70 cost lights that are just fine.
Absolutely. And you know what? Even if she was another element, I don't think it would have been a much more, I don't know, much more convenient pull for people. Just being the economy of the game at the moment, what it costs, even though you get it for 18,000 guaranteed, I think people are not saving their Visior for limited Guild War characters, even if that's the application. It would need to be a, I don't even know what element. I don't even know, because you're right. Water is the only element I could think of that was worthy of it, and Dia came out very similarly. That being said, I did attempt to do some Dia stat analysis to try to do an MR character review. I do think her stats did come in well below Miranda's, though. At least from like the first like 3 tabs I'd gone through, it was far enough below that I just stopped, and I'm like, I can't do this because it's that far off. But yeah, I don't think a different element would have changed much, because I know even for me when I do my report card section, I really kind of like talk about my final thoughts. I don't contextualize those things in my final grade. I try to at least like objectively look at the character, and sure, there's some meta, things. Vision cards exist that affect things, but I don't think a different element would have changed my final thought on her at all.
I think she would have sold better if they just copy the vision card 10K guaranteed and put that onto these 70 costs. I mean, we have to spend so much on shards to build them up, if we want to do it in any sort of reasonable time, that for such a niche, gameplay purpose, which is essentially class match and limited guild wars at this point for these units, unless they just come out broken like Halloween Lucia did,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
There's been a couple cases where they just, Halloween, Little Leela as well was just another overtuned unit.
Right.
Barring those two examples, every other 70 cost, I think is, reasonably power to cost ratio. I think 10K is a much better value for that.
And on that note of things being properly tuned or not tuned to their cost, this question is a good one, JB. Obviously, we thought of this with the draft league. This is your submission here. After playing in the draft league, and one of the things that Kayshawn does very well, they ascribe, and we as a community kind of decide, they ascribe a new cost to units, where there are some units that just aren't a good representation of their cost. And so we have some units like Bradley who are 110 cost units. We have some units that haven't performed as well, and they get bumped down a couple grades. And I think even Queen from Lightning was one of those units. There's a whole bunch of others, but inspired off that, rebalancing costs. Should Gumi go back and rebalance the costs of some legacy units? I don't know. What do you guys think, Reindell? You want to kick that off?
Yeah, I'll be the devil's advocate here and say, do we have enough cost restricted content that it would matter? I would love to see a lot more cost restricted content, because I feel like that's where you really need to use more creativity, and where you get a chance to make your older units shine. A lot of the current meta is essentially the war of the 100 costs, where you just have 300 just unit cost teams fighting each other. So I would love to see a lot more cost restricted content, just to change these fights off a lot. And then, yeah, definitely revisiting the costs of units would be an interesting mechanic, because right now we have some MR units that are much stronger than 80 cost units. And as you mentioned, some of the cost 70 units are hidden cost 90 units. So there's definitely, I don't know how it's balanced currently, but it does not represent the state of power that is currently existing.
I 100% agree. I've been calling for more cost restricted content for years now. It was a big loss, I think, when class match went to every other month, and there was a big period, it was like 5 or 6 months where we didn't have it at all. But I agree, they should lean more into it. Maybe even could make PvE more interesting if you were having to kind of work within some framework, in terms of cost or something like that. But yeah, I think I agree. I think cost comes up, not enough now that for them to do it, maybe it doesn't make as much sense. I think their approach has also been that they say, hey, we're constantly going back and upgrading these old units. I think the counterpoint there is that maybe some units don't get enough of an upgrade to really move the needle at all for them.
I would agree. I was thinking long and hard about this, to be honest, through the day, because we've talked about cost a lot. I'm actually of the opinion probably not to rebalance the cost, or very rare circumstances to do so. The thing with the game is all it takes is one vision card to come out, like a Dark Odin, and completely change the game. Even Dark, that Anima vision card coming out, Wind, has the agility and the AoE res. Fire has their luck and agility. Like one small single tweak can enable a whole cast of characters like it had previously. The introduction of a new character like Elena completely can revolutionize an element. And so, because there are so many external factors outside of just cost, they change frequently enough now that I don't think revisiting this. Obviously, some characters that are way over or way under. Ones that are egregiously bad, sure, go ahead and amend that. If you want to make Eileen a 50 cost unit, I'm sorry, I'm kidding. But like seriously, that's a good example. I actually went through the 100 cost unit list, and out of like I think there's like 30, maybe more. There was only like 2 or 3 that I really thought like, man, this is like not a 100 cost unit. The rest of them, although they're not as good as the other 100 cost units, they're certainly competitive or not better to the 80 or 90. So I feel like you'd just constantly be tweaking costs based upon the meta changes, what came out that. I think as long as Gumi knows they have a rough idea of what that unit should have at the minimum, they try to stay around those guidelines. I think it's okay.
I can see that. I've enjoyed it in Kaison's League though, because when you can only have one copy of a unit, per division, it kind of can increase their value even more if they're just one of the better characters in the game. So having a lesser cost or a higher cost, depending on where they are in the power spectrum, I think helps balance it out.
Absolutely. And it does. And right, there are certainly characters that are over or under tuned for a note here. We'll just finish off with this. There was a very interesting tier list. This is a UR horn tier list to say which characters are the best ones to invest the UR horns into, which are getting more and more sparse to acquire. They're still around, but not nearly what they were for the first 2 months. And so this is a tier list based off which units are best to invest that antler into. The UR antlers, not the UR.
Yeah, so this is the actual Transcendence, kind of tier list. Purely who do you want to? Who are the best units to take to 140, essentially?
Yes. So any units here that you're seeing in these categories that should or should not be in 140, in your opinion, in terms of the priority that it seems? Bro, Black Rose Elena immediately stands out to me again. I have no idea.
Seen her all that much in videos.
I'm surprised to see Rolkia, the Earth Gunner, in S tier as well. And in my opinion, I've seen people try to run him successfully, but he's never so far impressed me in a fight. So I don't think I would prioritize him very much.
I think Amnelis as well. I would not put her in S. I would put her 1 rank lower.
I would agree. They both have underwhelmed.
Units that I might bump up in this list would be Perrine, potentially. She was in the top category in the previous list. I wonder why she's not in this one.
Good point.
And then the tanks that are in here, notably Dialdo, as we mentioned earlier, is maybe not rated here because of meta reasons mostly. And Joom gets a fantastic Transcendence ability because she now has an AoE means to reduce counter abilities, and nowadays counter abilities are incredibly strong. So just that makes her worth it in my mind.
Same. And on your point of the tanks, Warrior and Light of Celeste are absolutely worthy of that horn as well. The antler.
I would take Yuffie over Elena in the rank as well.
I would agree. Yuffie's definitely too low compared to Elena. Maybe with Addison now, but even then, I have Addison. I have not been trying her with Elena. Like, there's so many other good potential synergies. Yuffie should definitely be a step higher, and Roy a step lower. Roy does not deserve your antler. Winter Victoria does not deserve your antler either. That is definitely too high.
If we could only give her an antler
right?
to find out.
Seriously, yeah, no upgrades in sight for her. Yeah, overall this is close, but there's a couple of swings and misses for certain in terms of priority overall.
What about that bottom list? Any in there? I think Ayaka, I think should be much higher. Resnick should be higher.
Resnick, absolutely. These two are musts. Ayaka and Resnick absolutely should be your S tier units. They are staples to go with their respective tanks and elements.
Yeah, he has Velas in S tier. I'm not sure why Resnick isn't.
I would give a case for Valentino Dira. I believe she is once properly transcended, she becomes a unit as powerful. She's in B right now, but she's as good as Yuffie, in my opinion, once you get her transcended.
That's insanity. Yeah, no. I actually brought her to 40 reincarnations because I thought she was that good. I completely agree. She's right there with Yuffie. Absolutely, way too low here. I agree. Very good call out on that hidden mistake.
I'm surprised to see Velne in A. Like, I mean, whatever. It's like a free, reincarnation, but
never used her.
I don't think her kit. I mean, she's a Lancer job, so just don't
True.
think her
Never
kit is
saw her
good.
get used.
I'm not gonna lie, even the Final Fantasy VII units, I'm a little surprised. Cloud and Barrett should not be an A compared to some of these other units. Aerith maybe, but like that's super niche.
Yeah. Whisper should not. Lucia should not.
Wait, Lucia? Oh yeah, Lucia. Yeah, that's a tough sell. I would agree. Those definitely too high. Even Rafale. But again, we're talking about future upgrades. We'll see what happens. I could be underrating her.
So
Yeah.
I think this means we need to make our own tier list.
I think
There's enough disagreements here that we need to
I'll
make our own.
surely tune into that.
That is definitely the case. But good. Well, we are at the end of our podcast for tonight. So closing things off here again, Reindell, thank you so much for joining us. This was super fun. I know everyone's going to look forward to it. Hopefully you enjoyed it as well.
Oh, very much so. Thank you so much for the invite, guys.
But yeah, any closing thoughts here to sign off, things you want to say or just anything?
I'll just say thank you for the invite again, and that if people have questions or they want to reach out to me on Discord, my channel's still there. So if you look at one of my old videos, you can still contact me through that, and I'll be happy to respond.
Yeah, so I want to echo the same thing. Thanks, Reindell. I've been a big fan, and you've been a friend for a while. So thanks again for coming on, and hopefully you will find some time to join my tournaments here in the coming months.
I definitely want to.
Awesome.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah, well, on that note, thanks for watching, everybody. And big thank you again to Reindell for coming on. And obviously, we have a lot to look forward to in the next week and looking forward to getting some more Q&A questions from you guys. So keep those coming every week. Love going through this part of the podcast. But that's it for now. Good luck pulling Dialdo for those that are, and we'll talk to y'all soon.